They laughed at her because she never shouted, because she was quiet, gentle, and always finished last during drills. They thought she didn't belong until her dog tag hit the ground and everything changed. This is the story of Elena Brooks and the day a military base learned what quiet strength really looks like. At Fort Harrington Training Base, surrounded by rising dust in the bark of drill instructors, a young woman named Elena Brooks stood out, but not for reasons anyone admired. She was 28, slim-framed, soft-voiced, with tightly tied chestnut hair and eyes that rarely met anyone else's. When other cadets ran obstacle courses screaming battle cries, Elena finished silently, always last. When teams were barked orders across the training field, Elena said little. She was the ghost at morning formation, present but easily overlooked. She can't shoot hard, can't yell loud, can't even lift the casualty dummy, one cadet said with a snort, nudging his friend during rifle practice. Wrong career, wrong place, another muttered. Elena didn't react. She just kept quietly cleaning her medical bag, checking her gear with a surgeon's care. Every break, every free moment, she sat alone, always wiping down tools, restocking gauze, inspecting tourniquets. A silver dog tag hung from her neck, old and scratched, with a faint set of numbers hand-carved into the back. No one ever asked about it. No one cared to. To many, Elena looked like someone who wandered into the wrong career field. A nursing student who got lost and ended up in a combat support unit. She never argued, never explained herself. She never bragged about her past, never volunteered stories or asked for recognition. Even when her medical treatments were praised during training, she responded only with a quiet nod. There was no arrogance, no demand to be seen. Her bunkmates whispered about her at night, how she never winced during grueling PT sessions, how her hands never trembled, even under simulated combat pressure, how she seemed to know things no one had taught yet. She probably worked as an EMT or something before, someone guessed. Just lucky. It'll catch up to her, another said. But what disturbed them most was her calm. She didn't fight back when mocked, didn't react to exclusion. She wasn't cold, just distant. Cadets nicknamed her the Ghost, not because she was stealthy, but because she moved through training like she didn't really belong to their world. They were wrong, and they were about to find out how wrong. The day of the comprehensive tactical assessment began like any other. Sweat-soaked uniforms, clipped commands, boots pounding against dry gravel. For most cadets, this was a chance to shine, to prove themselves under pressure. For Elena Brooks, it was just another day doing what she always did, working quietly, efficiently, unnoticed. She had been assigned to the rear support group. It was where the quieter, slower, less combat-effective cadets ended up, those not expected to excel in aggressive drills or field leadership. Her job was to run triage on simulated battlefield injuries, applying tourniquets, checking vitals, stabilizing wounded teammates. Nothing flashy, nothing heroic, just protocol. As she moved from one casualty to the next, checking pulses and injecting saline into IV bags, a male cadet nearby sneered, "Bet she doesn't even know how to start a field chest decompression. All she's good at is playing nurse." His friends laughed. Elena ignored them. Her hand stayed steady as she patched a gash on a teammate's thigh. She didn't look up. She never did. But the assessment that day had an unexpected guest. General Richard Monroe, commander of the Joint Eastern Forces, was visiting the base unannounced. A towering figure with decades of service and the kind of presence that turns silence into something electric. Instructors stiffened when he walked by. Cadets froze mid-movement. Elena didn't notice him at first. She was kneeling beside a simulation casualty, checking breath sounds, when her dog tag slipped from under her collar and fell into the dirt. Sunlight hit the metal just right. The flash caught the general's eye. He paused mid-step, walked over, and picked it up without a word. At first, it was just a gesture, until he flipped it over. His body went rigid. He read the hand-carved numbers softly under his breath. Woman 9B, Echo Point, 1722. The surrounding noise faded. Conversations trailed off. Instructors stopped moving. Cadets looked up in confusion. The general's hand began to tremble. "Who carved these numbers?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Elena stood slowly. "I did, sir." He stared at her. "You were at Echo Point?" She nodded once. The reaction was instant. Gasps, whispers. One cadet even dropped the training dummy he was carrying. General Monroe turned toward the lead instructor. "That operation had only 3 survivors," he said, his voice now steel, "and one of them was the daughter of the medic who died shielding a team from enemy fire." The lead instructor stammered, "Sir, her file, it only shows standard medical training, no deployment history, no clearance for special operations." Monroe didn't look at him. His eyes stayed locked on Elena. "That's because Echo Point was a black op. Deep insertion, no records, no official names, medical support for a recon team that didn't exist on paper." He held up the dog tag. "These numbers, they're coordinates. The date everything went wrong, and the mission ID that never made it into the history books." A female cadet who had laughed at Elena earlier paled. "We've been mocking someone who was actually there?" General Monroe nodded grimly. "When I reached the evac site, the med station was in ruins. I was pulled from the rubble by a young woman who refused to leave until everyone who could be saved was." His voice broke slightly. "I remember her hands, steady as steel, even while the world was on fire. And those numbers, carved into the side of her medical kit." The field was silent. Cadets stared at Elena like they were seeing her for the first time. She didn't stand taller. She didn't smirk. She didn't speak. She just waited for the truth to settle like dust after a battle. General Monroe stood motionless, still holding the worn dog tag in his hand like it was made of glass. The numbers etched into the back, 019B Echo Point 1722, weren't just coordinates or a date. They were a memorial, a battlefield condensed into 6 digits, a secret buried so deep most soldiers had never even heard of it. He looked straight at Elena. "You were only 23 when Echo Point happened?" he asked. "Yes, sir," she replied calmly. "Jesus." Monroe ran a hand down his face, as if trying to erase the memory that had just surfaced. "You were barely out of advanced field training." The lead instructor stepped forward, holding up his tablet with visible confusion. "Sir, I'm reviewing her entire personnel file right now. There's no mention of any deployment, let alone anything like Echo Point." "There wouldn't be," Monroe said flatly, "because Echo Point was compartmentalized beyond standard clearance. Even base commanders weren't informed. The mission was blacked out. No press, no ceremony. Just a handful of soldiers dropped into hostile territory under a failed intel brief. They weren't supposed to come back." He turned back to Elena, quieter now. "Only 3 did, and one of them saved my life." A ripple went through the field. Every instructor, every cadet, all of them turned to look at Elena with new eyes. A male cadet whispered, "I thought the entire Echo team was MIA." "They were," Monroe said. "Publicly, we told families their sons and daughters died as heroes. But the truth, it was a slaughter, a betrayal. And while the rest of us tried to escape, a young field medic stayed behind, performing surgery in a bombed-out shack, dragging men out from under collapsed beams, packing wounds while bullets tore through the air." He stepped toward Elena now, his eyes wet but voice firm. "That medic carved these numbers into her medical kit, so she'd never forget where she was and what it took." Another cadet, this time one of the women who had mocked Elena during PT, stepped forward. Her eyes were glassy. "We laughed at you," she whispered. "We called you soft." Elena didn't flinch. "I don't need an apology," she said quietly. "I just need you to be better when it's your turn." General Monroe turned sharply to the lead instructor. "From this day forward, Operation Echo Point 0119B will be studied by every medical support trainee at this base." He paused. "And their instructor will be Elena Brooks." The lead instructor blinked, stunned. "Sir, that's highly irregular." "It's not a request," Monroe said. "She has more field experience than anyone here. She's earned it." Elena said nothing. Her silence wasn't out of humility. It was habit. It was survival. She had learned long ago that when you're surrounded by chaos, silence can be a kind of armor. And now that silence spoke louder than anything else. The general stepped back and raised his hand to his brow, a sharp, flawless salute. Every instructor on the field followed suit. Then, one by one, the cadets did too. Not because they were ordered to, but because something inside them had changed. This woman, whom they had ridiculed, ignored, underestimated, was now their standard. Their ghost had become their guide, and the battlefield she carried in her memory was now part of their training ground. After that day, nothing looked different, but everything felt different. Elena Brooks didn't change her routine. She still walked to the training field alone, still sat quietly during mess hours, still cleaned her medical kit every evening with the same patient, methodical hands. She didn't bask in the attention. She didn't seek admiration, and she certainly didn't act like someone who had just been publicly honored by one of the highest-ranking generals in the region. But now, when she stepped onto the training grounds, cadets stood straighter. Some saluted first, some whispered her name with quiet reverence, and no one laughed anymore. A photo of her old dog tag, with the hand-carved numbers that once seemed like nothing, was mounted on the wall of the medical training facility. Beneath it, a plaque read 0119B, so others may live. Cadets who once called her the ghost now asked to study under her. She shared what she could, but never stories. Only skills, calm under pressure, field improvisation, quiet leadership. Her voice stayed soft. Her instructions were always clear. And when one of the younger medics asked why she never told anyone who she really was, Elena's answer was simple. Because being respected shouldn't depend on medals. It should come from how well you do your job when no one is watching. In private, instructors updated her file. Her past was still technically classified, but her status was quietly elevated. She was no longer just another cadet. She had become a symbol of restraint, of honor, of what real strength looks like in a world obsessed with loudness and rank. But for Elena, nothing had changed. She was never doing it for glory. She was doing it for the ones who never came home. 1 month later, Elena Brooks was selected to lead a newly formed medical support team heading into active deployment. It was quiet news, passed along without ceremony. She packed her gear like she always did, precisely, thoroughly, with reverence. In her journal, tucked between two folded gauze pads, she had written only one sentence. Being gentle isn't weakness. It's how I refuse to become what once nearly destroyed me. The night before departure, Elena gathered her new team in a dimly lit prep room. The air buzzed with anticipation, fear, and that silent question every soldier asked before shipping out. Will I come back? Elena didn't sugarcoat it. Some of you will see things that will stay with you forever, she said. People will die, people you care about, but your job is not to save everyone. It's to be ready. When someone can be saved, you do it, without hesitation, without panic, without ego. A young medic raised her hand. Ma'am, hey, how do you stay so calm? Elena gave a quiet smile, because panic never saved anyone. Anger never healed anyone. Fear never brought anyone home. She touched her dog tag through her uniform. These numbers remind me that every life we save matters, not because of rank or recognition, but because someone is waiting for them. 6 months later, her entire team came home, every single one. And somewhere on a base wall back home, that old silver tag still hangs, quiet and heavy, like the memory of a battlefield no one talks about, but no one forgets.